Let's start though with climate, because how do you get big global leaders, corporates, to care and pay more than just lip service to ESG and climate concerns? Surely they must realise that things like rising floodwaters in Asia not only impacts livelihoods but also manufacturing and export.
Oh, absolutely. You know, the looming spectre of climate change is not going anywhere. We continue seeing temperature, sea level rises, extreme weather events such as wildfire, catastrophic floods worldwide, which we're seeing now are really compromising critical infrastructure, crop production, and the livability of many heavily populated areas. And I think that climate-related risks are also really amplifying growing tensions coming from trade and geopolitical and domestic conflicts. So the opportunity here for companies, of course, is to prepare for increasing pressure on climate issues from all of their stakeholders, whether it's investors, customers, employees, communities. So I'm sure we're going to see, watch this space. It's going to continue developing.
And in terms of those companies, Carolina, can you think of give us any examples of leaders of companies that you think are able to look beyond just the quarterly reporting cycle and are thinking long term when it comes to risks like climate and cybersecurity, as you mentioned?
Yeah, and I think many businesses have been struggling short term with how to survive and build resilience the past 2 years. And I think we're learning now that in past times we may have rewarded efficiency over over resilience and growth over sustainability a little bit too much. And we may have created a bit of a resilience debt by not responding to and preparing for emerging risks. And if you think about it for a second, the past decades, that relative predictability of the business environment has enabled companies to pursue efficiency that has helped fuel exceptional profit growth. But that focus on efficiency has also left some companies really lean and very vulnerable to shocks. So what we're seeing now is that companies that have allowed a little more slack in the system have had the resources to adjust and find alternative models quicker and bounce back quicker.
Fascinating to see how those who do have a little bit more slack are now seeing the benefit of that. Carolina, let's dive into cyber risk. Clearly, the pandemic has exposed many individuals, households, and businesses to cyber risk in a way that they weren't before, with more and more people and businesses coming online, working from home. When it comes to cyber risk, where does the bulk of the risk come from? Is it internal? Is it inside players who are actually the main culprits, or is it external cyber criminals? How should we think about that?
I would say it's a combination. I mean, what we've seen is that this shift to remote working, we see industries undergo rapid digitalization, and it's really led to both supply chain disruption, but also greater exposure to cyber attacks, and especially ransomware. And I think it's fair to say that we are at that point now where cyber threats are actually growing faster than our ability to effectively prevent and manage them. But then in addition to cyber attacks, we see, critical infrastructure failures, increasingly aggressive regulatory environment, unprecedented identity theft, and also companies struggling with executing on digital transformation effectively. So it's a whole host of things that needs to be on the minds of C-suites and executives today.
Comes to ransomware, in this report that you published, the Global Risks Report, you highlight how the total value of ransomware payments being made in cryptocurrencies has soared over the last years. And one of the downfalls is that when you are paid in cryptocurrencies, it's much harder to detect the origin of the criminals. What role do you think cryptocurrencies do play here when it comes to cybersecurity and cyber attacks? And what can governments and policymakers be doing to mitigate the problems here?
And you're right. The report highlights cryptocurrencies mainly in the context of how they have allowed cyber criminals to collect payments without risking detection or monetary clawback. But I think, cryptocurrencies, I think what we need to do is realize that they're really volatile, but the important thing here is that they need to get better regulated. And that is really where governments and central banks need to take a look at cryptocurrencies and define them and also regulate them more firmly.